The story begins in Paris, 1865, a nation still recovering from revolution and empire and watching across the Atlantic as the United States fought its own civil war. France, a land that had once crowned emperors and beheaded kings, had always been fascinated by America's great democratic experiment. To many French intellectuals, the U.S. represented what their own revolutions had failed to fully achieve: a republic where freedom and equality were not just ideals, but living laws. One such man was Édouard René de La Boulaye, a respected French jurist, scholar, and ardent supporter of the Union cause during the American Civil War. La Boulaye often spoke passionately about liberty and democracy in his lectures. In the summer of 1865, as news reached Paris that the North had triumphed and slavery had been abolished, La Boulaye proposed a radical idea. Quote, "If a monument should rise in America as a memorial to her independence, I should think it only natural if it were built by united effort, a gift from the French people to the American people in the name of liberty." Unquote. That sentence, spoken in a Paris salon, planted a seed that would grow into one of the most recognizable monuments on earth. Among the listeners that day was a young sculptor named Frédéric Auguste Bartholdi, a man whose imagination was as vast as his ambition. Frédéric Auguste Bartholdi was captivated by colossal forms. Born in Colmar, in the Alsace region of France, he had studied architecture and sculpture in Paris and traveled to Egypt, where he became mesmerized by the towering monuments of the pharaohs. He once wrote in his notebook, quote, "There everything is gigantic and speaks to the imagination. Why should not liberty be as great?" Unquote. When La Boulaye shared his idea, Bartholdi immediately began sketching. He envisioned a robed female figure, not a queen or a goddess, but a personification of an idea: liberty enlightening the world. In her right hand she would hold the torch, the eternal flame of freedom. In her left, a tablet inscribed with a date, July 4th, 1776, the birth of the American Republic. At her feet would lie broken chains, symbolizing the end of oppression. This was no mere statue, it was a philosophy in metal and stone. But there was a problem. France, under Emperor Napoleon III, was hardly in a position to fund such a grand symbol of Republican liberty. And America, just emerging from a bloody civil war, neither had the time nor money to build monuments. Bartholdi would have to wait. In 1870, war erupted between France and Prussia. Bartholdi served in the army, defending his homeland. France lost the war, Napoleon III fell, and the French Republic was reborn. Amid the ruins of empire, Bartholdi saw opportunity. A republic once more, and what better time to renew the friendship between France and America? In 1871, he sailed to the United States with letters of introduction and a model of his proposed statue. He met with influential figures, including President Ulysses S. Grant and the publisher Joseph Pulitzer, and began scouting potential locations. When his ship entered New York Harbor, Bartholdi's eyes widened. The sea opened up into a vast bay, filled with sails and smoke. Ahead stood Bedloe's Island, a small, unremarkable patch of land that commanded a perfect view of the harbor and the city beyond. He turned to his companion and declared, quote, "Here, this is where liberty shall stand, at the gateway to America." Unquote. The project was officially announced in 1875. It would be a joint effort between the two nations. The people of France would build and donate the statue. The people of America would build its pedestal. The statue would be called La Liberté éclairant le monde, liberty enlightening the world. In France, enthusiasm spread quickly. A public campaign began, and despite economic hardship, donations poured in from ordinary citizens, students, workers, farmers, and soldiers. Even school children contributed a few centimes to the cause.
In workshops around Paris, Bartholdi and his team began building the statue piece by piece. For the engineering of the internal framework, Bartholdi turned to a brilliant young engineer, Alexandre Gustave Eiffel, who would later become famous for the Eiffel Tower. Eiffel's challenge was to design a skeleton strong enough to withstand Atlantic storms, but flexible enough to allow the copper skin to expand and contract with heat and cold. He devised an ingenious system of iron supports and flexible metal ribs, a marvel of 19th-century engineering. By 1884, after nearly a decade of work, the Statue of Liberty stood complete in Paris, a 151-foot colossus gleaming with new copper. At the dedication ceremony, the French Prime Minister declared, quote, "May this light shine across the seas as a symbol of friendship and liberty between our two peoples," unquote. Dismantling the statue was an immense undertaking. The copper plates were carefully numbered, the framework disassembled, and everything packed into 214 crates. On May 21, 1885, the French frigate Isère left Rouen, carrying her precious cargo across the Atlantic. Crowds cheered as she sailed down the Seine, escorted by French and American flags fluttering side by side. After a month at sea, Isère arrived safely in New York Harbor on June 17, 1885. The harbor erupted with excitement. Ships blew their horns, and thousands of New Yorkers lined the docks to welcome the gift from France. But there was a problem. The statue had arrived, but the pedestal wasn't ready.
In the United States, enthusiasm had been slower to build. The government had not provided funds, and private donations lagged. Some Americans even mocked the project as a foreign curiosity. But one man refused to let the dream die. Joseph Pulitzer, the Hungarian-born newspaper publisher of the New York World. Pulitzer launched a nationwide fundraising campaign, appealing not to the wealthy, but to ordinary Americans. His editorial read, "Let us not wait for the millionaires. The statue is for the people, and the people will build the pedestal." He promised to print the name of every contributor, no matter how small the amount. Pennies, nickels, and dimes began flooding in. A farmer in Kansas sent $5. A group of children from Massachusetts sent $1.35. A poor widow wrote, "This is all I can spare, but I give it gladly to liberty." Within 5 months, over 120,000 contributions were received, most under $1. The American pedestal was funded by the people, for the people.
The pedestal, designed by architect Richard Morris Hunt, was a massive granite structure rising from the old fort on Bedloe's Island. Construction began in 1884 and took 2 years to complete. Finally, in 1886, the statue's pieces were unpacked and reassembled under Bartholdi's supervision. It was a colossal puzzle. 300 copper sheets, 2 million pounds of iron, and a framework rising 305 feet from ground to torch. When the final rivet was placed, Bartholdi climbed to the top and personally released the French flag covering her face. For the first time, Lady Liberty looked out across the harbor, her torch lifted high, her gaze fixed on the horizon. October 28, 1886, the day of dedication. New York City exploded with celebration. Thousands of ships filled the harbor, their horns echoing through the bay. President Grover Cleveland, once the governor of New York, presided over the ceremony. He declared, "We will not forget that liberty has made her home here, nor shall her chosen altar be neglected." Bartholdi pulled the rope, the veil dropped, and the crowd roared. Cannons boomed from ships and forts. Bands played the Star-Spangled Banner. For the first time, the Statue of Liberty stood complete, a towering figure of hope at the entrance to the new world. In the decades that followed, Liberty became the first sight seen by millions of immigrants arriving by ship. Between 1892 and 1954, over 12 million immigrants passed through nearby Ellis Island. For many, the sight of the statue brought tears. An Italian immigrant recalled, "When we saw the lady, we knew we were safe. We kissed the deck and prayed." The statue was not merely bronze and iron, it was a promise that in America one could begin anew. In 1903, a bronze plaque was added at the base, bearing the words of poet Emma Lazarus. "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door." Those words transformed liberty's meaning forever, from a political symbol to a humanitarian one. As the 20th century dawned, the Statue of Liberty weathered storms, lightning, and even neglect. Her copper turned from golden brown to sea green due to natural oxidation, giving her the iconic hue we know today. During World War I, she became a rallying symbol of freedom against tyranny. Soldiers posed before her torch as they departed for Europe. In World War II, her image appeared on posters, calling Americans to defend liberty once more. Through depression, war, and social change, she endured, silent but eloquent. By the 1980s, the Statue of Liberty was in danger. Her internal structure had weakened, and corrosion threatened her stability. In preparation for her centennial, a massive international restoration began in 1984. Over 2 years, workers replaced corroded iron bars with stainless steel, restored her copper skin, and re-gilded her torch with 24-karat gold. On July 4, 1986, President Ronald Reagan led the centennial celebration, calling her the lady who has stood through war and peace, through times of plenty and want, as a friend to all who seek freedom. Fireworks lit up the New York sky, and ships once again filled the harbor. It was as if the world paused to thank liberty for 100 years of light. Today, the Statue of Liberty stands not just as a monument, but as a living symbol of the American spirit. She is freedom made visible. She is the voice of every immigrant, every dreamer, every person who ever believed in a better tomorrow. She has witnessed the skyline rise and fall, from the Twin Towers to the Freedom Tower. She has seen wars begin and end, generations come and go. Yet she endures, torch aloft, unyielding. To stand before her today is to stand before history itself. Her message has never faded. Liberty, not as conquest, but as hope.
In the quiet of dawn, when the city still sleeps, the sun rises over New York Harbor, and its first rays touch the torch of liberty. The copper glows gold once more, as it did the day she was unveiled. From the deck of every arriving ship, from the window of every airplane, her presence remains the same. She does not speak, she does not move, yet her silence speaks louder than any words. For more than a century, she has stood watch, not over a nation, but over an idea that began in 1776, was reborn in 1886, and still lives today. That all people are created equal, and that liberty, once lit, must never be allowed to die.